Daily Words of God. Those who drag their utterly unbelieving children and relatives into church are all extremely selfish, and they are just exhibiting kindness. These people only focus on being loving, regardless of whether they believe or not, and regardless of whether it is God's will. Some bring their wives before God, or drag their parents before God. And whether or not the Holy Spirit agrees with this, or is working in them, they blindly continue to adopt talented people for God. What benefit can possibly be gained from extending kindness toward these non-believers? Even if they, who are without the presence of the Holy Spirit, struggle to follow God, they still cannot be saved as one might believe. Those who can receive salvation are not actually so easy to obtain. People who have not undergone the Holy Spirit's work and trials, and have not been perfected by God incarnate, are utterly incapable of being made complete. Therefore, from the moment they begin to nominally follow God, those people lack the Holy Spirit's presence. In light of their conditions and actual states, they simply cannot be made complete. As such, the Holy Spirit decides not to expend much energy upon them, nor does He provide any enlightenment or guide them in any way. He merely allows them to follow along, and will ultimately reveal their outcomes. This is enough. Humanity's enthusiasm and intentions come from Satan, and in no way can these things complete the Holy Spirit's work. No matter what people are like, they must have the work of the Holy Spirit. Can humans make humans complete? Why does a husband love his wife? Why does a wife love her husband? Why are children dutiful to their parents? Why do parents dote on their children? What sorts of intentions do people actually harbor? Is their intent not to satisfy their own plans and selfish desires? Do they truly mean to act for the sake of God's management plan? Are they really acting for the sake of God's work? Is their intent to fulfill the duties of a created being? Those who, ever since the moment they began to believe in God, have been unable to attain the presence of the Holy Spirit, can never gain the work of the Holy Spirit. These people are decidedly objects to be destroyed. No matter how much love one has for them, it cannot replace the work of the Holy Spirit. People's enthusiasm and love represent human intentions, but cannot represent God's intentions, and nor can they be a substitute for God's work. Even if one extends the greatest possible amount of love or mercy toward those people who nominally believe in God and pretend to follow Him without knowing what it actually means to believe in God, they will still not obtain God's sympathy, nor will they gain the work of the Holy Spirit. Even if people who sincerely follow God are of poor caliber and unable to understand a lot of truths, they can still occasionally gain the work of the Holy Spirit. However, those who are of considerably good caliber but do not sincerely believe simply cannot gain the Holy Spirit's presence. There is absolutely no possibility for salvation with such people. Even if they read God's words, or occasionally listen to sermons, or even sing praises to God, they will ultimately not be able to survive until the time of rest. Whether people seek in earnest is not determined by how others judge them or how the people around view them, but by whether the Holy Spirit works on them and whether they have attained the presence of the Holy Spirit. Moreover, it depends on whether their dispositions change and on whether they have gained any knowledge of God after undergoing the Holy Spirit's work over a certain period. If the Holy Spirit works upon a person, this person's disposition will gradually change, and their perspective on believing in God will gradually grow purer. Regardless of how long people follow God, as long as they have changed, it means that the Holy Spirit is working on them. If they have not changed, it means that the Holy Spirit is not working on them. Even if these people do render some service, what drives them to do so is a desire to receive blessings. Only doing service occasionally cannot replace experiencing a change in their dispositions. Ultimately, they will still be destroyed, for in the kingdom there will be no need for service doers, nor will there be a need for anyone whose disposition has not changed to be of service to those people who have been perfected and who are faithful to God. Those words spoken in the past, when one believes in the Lord, fortune smiles upon one's entire family, are suitable for the age of grace, but are unrelated to humanity's destination. They were only appropriate for a stage during the age of grace. The connotation of those words was directed at the peace and material blessings that people enjoyed. They did not mean that the entire family of one who believes in the Lord will be saved, nor did they mean that when one receives blessings, one's entire family can also be brought into rest. Whether one receives blessings or suffers misfortune is determined according to one's essence, not according to any common essence one might share with others. That sort of saying or rule simply has no place in the kingdom. If a person is ultimately able to survive, it is because they have met God's requirements. And if they are ultimately unable to remain until the time of rest, it is because they have been disobedient toward God and have not satisfied God's requirements. Everyone has a suitable destination. These destinations are determined according to each individual's essence and have absolutely nothing to do with other people. A child's wicked behavior cannot be transferred to their parents, nor can a child's righteousness be shared with their parents. A parent's wicked behavior cannot be transferred to their children, nor can a parent's righteousness be shared with their children. Everyone bears their respective sins, and everyone enjoys their respective blessings. No one can be a substitute for another person. This is righteousness. From man's perspective, if parents receive blessings, then their children should be able to too. And if children commit evil, then their parents must atone for those sins. This is a human perspective and a human way of doing things. It is not God's perspective. Everyone's outcome is determined according to the essence that comes from their conduct, and it is always determined appropriately. No one can bear the sins of another. Even more so, no one can receive punishment in another's stead. This is absolute. A parent's doting care for their children does not indicate that they can perform righteous deeds in their children's stead. Nor does the dutiful affection of a child to their parents mean that they can perform righteous deeds in their parents' stead. This is what is truly meant by the words, "Then shall two be in the field, the one shall be taken, and the other left. Two women shall be grinding at the mill, the one shall be taken, and the other left." People cannot take their evil-doing children into rest on the basis of their deep love for them. Nor can anyone take their wife or husband into rest on the basis of their own righteous conduct. This is an administrative rule. There can be no exceptions for anyone. In the end, doers of righteousness are doers of righteousness, and evildoers are evildoers. The righteous will eventually be allowed to survive, while the evildoers will be destroyed. The holy are holy, they are not filthy. The filthy are filthy, and not one part of them is holy. The people who will be destroyed are all the wicked ones, and the ones who will survive are all the righteous, even if the children of the wicked ones perform righteous deeds, and even if the parents of the righteous ones commit evil deeds. There is no relationship between a believing husband and an unbelieving wife, and there is no relationship between believing children and unbelieving parents. These two types of people are completely incompatible. Prior to entering into rest, one has physical relatives, but once one has entered into rest, one will no longer have any physical relatives to speak of. Those who do their duty are enemies of those who do not. Those who love God and those who hate Him are in opposition to one another. Those who will enter into rest and those who will have been destroyed are two incompatible types of creatures. Creatures that fulfill their duties will be able to survive, while those that do not fulfill their duties will be objects of destruction. What is more, this shall last through eternity. Do you love your husband in order to fulfill your duty as a created being? Do you love your wife in order to fulfill your duty as a created being? Are you dutiful to your unbelieving parents in order to fulfill your duty as a created being? Is the human view on believing in God right or wrong? Why do you believe in God? What do you wish to gain? How do you love God? Those who cannot fulfill their duties as created beings, and who cannot make an all-out effort, will become objects of destruction. There are physical relationships that exist between the people of today, as well as associations by blood. But in the future, these will all be shattered. Believers and unbelievers are not compatible. Rather, they are opposed to one another. Those in rest will believe that there is a God and will submit to God, whereas those who are disobedient to God will all have been destroyed. Families will no longer exist upon earth. How could there be parents or children or spousal relationships? The very incompatibility of belief and unbelief will have utterly severed such physical relationships.